All right, welcome into the News4JAGs podcast. I'm Jamal St here alongside Justin Barney. All right, we're back on our kind of regularly scheduled off-season plan. So today we're going to start looking ahead to free agency. I don't like to dive too far into the draft until at least the point where free agency is kind of wrapped up and you have a better idea of what the team needs.
Right, and we're getting close to free agency too, and off-season really kind of flies by. But once you hit that point this week of the transition, franchise tag could be applied to Jaguars players and around the league, and that's something we've kind of been watching. But you expect Josh Allen to get the franchise tag. I don't think he's going anywhere. And then you start free agency talk. Free agency period opens up very, very soon, second week of March, and we will start having a better idea where Jacksonville is going to lean to in the draft. So kind of like you, I mean, where they can fill some of these holes in free agency and not have to potentially expend a pick on a high draft pick on a spot that they've addressed in free agency. So you're going into free agency right now, and we're kind of looking at the guys that we would like the most, and then maybe some under the radar guys. So don't know if any of these happen, but our wish list for this.
Yeah, so we put together a little bit of a wish list, tried to keep it a little realistic. So we're going to do, each of us picked out 4 guys total, 2 under the radars and 2 that are the home run, throw the bag at the guy. This is go and fix a problem on this team kind of guys. So we haven't compared our lists. I think there's going to be some differentiation there. I'm pretty sure anyway. But I think the one thing that at least I landed on is I looked at my big tickets, so just a little bit of a spoiler overall. My big guys are all defense. I don't know if I have a single offensive guy on my big ticket list. So let's go with the big tickets first. I mean, that's what the people want, right? Everybody wants the home run free agent signing. So all right, I'll give it to you first. Who is your first superstar? This is the home run swing free agent for the Jaguars.
And these 2 guys will not come to Jacksonville because we know Jacksonville is not going to – a little bit of more of a cap situation with Jacksonville in terms of who they can go out and spend. This isn't 2 years ago where you can go out and just throw the bag at guys and write those checks and just keep adding zeros to it. My first guy, and I don't think he's going to be available, it's T. Higgins. And receiver-wise, he's a big body, coming off a little bit of a disappointing year in Cincinnati, but Cincinnati's got 3 big-time receivers that they've got to have to find some way to do, and I don't think you're letting Jamar Chase go. I think you're going to tag T. Higgins. I think he's going to be back in Cincinnati, but on just level the playing field, T. Higgins would be a guy that I would want to go and break the bank to, and with a little caveat, Michael Pittman Jr. would be that if you can't get Michael Pittman, but I think Michael Pittman's going to be in a similar situation to T. Higgins where he's not let out of Indianapolis. But my first guy to throw the bag at, add all the zeros to the checks, is going to be T. Higgins in Cincinnati.
Look, I like the T. Higgins thing. I think Jaguars fans like the idea of bringing T. Higgins. Who wouldn't like the idea of bringing T. Higgins? Look, T and Trevor Lawrence were together in college. He is the receiver type that the Jaguars have not had in a long time. I mean, maybe Allen Robinson the last time they had a receiver with size that can do the things like T. Higgins can do. Just realistically, I'm not sure if T. Higgins is getting out of Cincinnati. But it'd be a fantastic home run swing if the Jaguars could find a way to get it done. Here, I'll even throw you one more question at this. So let's say the Bengals do franchise tag T. Higgins like we expected, which as of the time of recording this, they have not. Would you be willing to trade for T. Higgins, knowing that you already have a 3rd-round pick at minimum wrapped up in Calvin Ridley? And if you were willing to, what would you give up?
Yeah, I don't know, because if you do agree to that trade for T. Higgins, they sign and trade deal. Not as frequent in the NFL as we see like in the NBA and stuff. But if you trade for T. Higgins, remember he's coming to you on a pricey contract. You're going to probably have to give up a second, maybe even a 1st-round pick to get him, 2nd, 3rd round, something to get T. Higgins. And then, oh, by the way, you're going to have to pay him top of the market contract. And let's say you sign Josh Allen to a long-term deal. You're already getting another guy top of the market contract. You decide you're going to bring back Calvin Ridley. I don't think you'd probably bring him back in that situation. But you're going to have 2 guys top of the market deals in Josh and T. Higgins. And then, oh, by the way, you're going to sign Trevor, probably not this year, but next year to a contract. That's 3 top of the market contract for guys. I just don't think Jacksonville's in a position to do that. I like the idea, Jamal, but I don't think that is probable for a team that's cash strapped. And then, oh, by the way, you're giving up capital to get him, and you're signing him or paying him a big deal when you're bringing him in. So probably a little bit cost prohibitive, trade prohibitive to do that situation, T. Higgins.
And don't forget, you're already paying Christian Kirk. So going and throwing a bag at T. Higgins would already be restrictive for the rest of the building of the team. So giving up any sort of draft picks on top of that,
right,
that's tough.
Yeah,
that's real tough to kind of stomach. All right, so T. Higgins is one of yours. You want to do the second one, and then I'll do my two?
Let you go.
You want to let me go? All right, so for my first one, because we've talked about a couple of guys over the course of the podcast the past few weeks, so I didn't want to bring up Robert Hunt or C.J. Gardner-Johnson.
Okay. I'm
not sure if C.J. would be a big-time or an under-the-radar guy, but I didn't want to bring up either one of them. Would love C.J. in Jacksonville. I think C.J. Gardner-Johnson would bring a grit that this team needs. I think Robert Hunt would be a big addition to the Jaguars' offensive line, but kind of thrown them out there in the past. So I want to go with a defensive lineman coming from the same place where your guy came from, Cincinnati, DJ Reader. Maybe I took a big free agent a little bit too literal, but DJ Reader is the kind of big body the Jaguars need on their defensive line. He's extremely good at stopping the run, something that if you watch the Jaguars' last game of the season, that's all you need to see. They struggled at times. He's not necessarily an impact pass rusher, but he can push the pocket. He had 2 sacks last year to go along with a handful of pressures and hurries. He is a guy who's dealing with an injury. He got injured, I think, in week 15 late in the season. So that could be something that's restrictive of his free agency, at least interest, but it also helps keep the price down. So I think DJ Reader would be a big addition. He is an elite run stopper. He's probably the guy the Jaguars thought they were getting when they paid Foley Fatukasi.
Right.
So I go and fix that said issue. Get DJ Reader. You also happen to weaken another team in the AFC in the process. Maybe I took big free agent a little too literally, but DJ Reader is my first guy.
Okay, I like it. I mean, they've got to get better on both lines, defensive line especially. Devon Hamilton, he regressed last year. And Foley Fatukasi, I don't think he's going to be back. So, hey, I like it. You got to get better at lines, and that's kind of where I'm heading with my next big free agent guy too.
All right, look, I think that's the big thing, and everybody keeps talking about get better in the trenches, and a big run stopper like DJ Reader isn't typically the guy that fans throw a party about when you sign him. They're not going to be dancing in the streets, going by Reader jerseys and stuff like that, but he's a guy that could make a big difference on that defense. All of a sudden, your linebackers aren't taking on as many blocks. All of a sudden, those runs that Derrick Henry had a ton of space aren't quite as much. Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker aren't seeing quarterbacks stepping up into the pocket as easily. So, and then if you get DJ Reader and Devon Hamilton does rebound back to where he was previously, all of a sudden now you have some really good big bodies you can rotate in the middle of your defensive line. You feel really good about where you're at.
Yep.
So, so I like that one. All right, Justin, who's your second guy?
All right, my next one is, again, not necessarily the best scheme fit, but Ryan Nielsen talking, hey, we want to get the best players on the field. We want to tailor our defense to the players. So a little bit of a non-scheme fit, but he's a big presence on that defensive line. Justin Madubuike from Baltimore. That swing from the fences guy. Again, he's going to be extremely cost prohibitive for Jacksonville. He's one of the top 5, 7, 8, 9 free agents available this offseason cycle. Again, not necessarily that scheme fit. He's come from the Ravens defense, a little different than Jacksonville. But again, Ryan Nielsen, I'm hopeful that they look at players and putting those best players in those positions. And again, this is not a position, this is not a signing where I think they go out and do it. I think this is a complete pie in the sky kind of situation. But other guys I like on that kind of the poor man's Madubuike. I like a Leonard Williams. I like a Sheldon Rankins, those kind of guys. But you got to get better on that defensive line, that in the trenches. I think Madubuike would be a home run bring in for me. And again, like T. Higgins, I don't think that's going to happen. Jacksonville is just too poor in this cycle. Yep. But again, you're talking about my pie in the sky, my guy who I would love to see come in this cycle and really help reset the defensive line. Give me a Madubuike from Baltimore.
Look, I don't think a single player made themselves more money in a single season than him.
Ooh, at all.
He had a fantastic year, made himself a ton of money, was an impact guy for Baltimore. If the Jaguars weren't interested in him, I'd have questions. From the scheme fit, I think Ryan Nielsen, those are the types of players that you can he'll find a home. He'll be fine. Look, he's interesting. The only thing from everything you said, you took a shot at my guy. That's my big free agent. I'm on a poor man's version. So my second big guy is Leonard Williams.
Okay, man. I mean, see, I like Leonard Williams.
He literally took a shot at my guy to like pump his guy up. Look, Leonard Williams is a former high-round draft pick. He's going to get a big contract. He had 6 sacks last season. He is a big body, a big guy who can go and, again, improve the trenches. I told you my big-time free agents will spend money on that D-line. Look, he is good against the run, and he has shown that I probably shouldn't hit that. He is good against the run, but he's shown he can be a good pass rusher as well. He's really improved. I think that was one of the knocks on him at one point was that maybe he wasn't as good a pass rusher. 6 sacks is nothing to frown at. Plus a bunch of pressures. He's shown consistently year over year that he can get to the quarterback with opportunities. I think Leonard Williams is a guy that is definitely worth exploring. He's probably going to get a pretty decent-sized contract. If the Jaguars did sign him, all of a sudden, again, you start feeling better about that defensive line. He's a guy who can play a bunch of spots along the line for you. He can play that 5 technique. If you wanted to do a 4-man front, he can play that 3 technique for you. He can move up and down, give you versatility, and again, strong run defender that can also get after the passer, which lines up with exactly what the Jaguars want to do. I think Leonard Williams would be a big-time swing, even though Justin.
I know. I love Leonard. I have him number 2 on my defensive line list, and Madubuike I like him better than Williams. Williams has kind of been that. I mean, he's been good. He's been good every stop in his career. Right down the road from Daytona Beach, Mainland, went out to Southern Cal and parlayed that into a top 10 draft pick. He's been a little bit of a he traded early on in his career, and he's been a guy who's done it. He's not an Aaron Donald type. He's not going to get you 15 sacks. But, I mean, when was the last time a Jacksonville Jaguars interior defensive lineman really kind of spooked you and said, this guy, we got to put some pressure on him. We got to double him. We've got to chip him somehow. There's nobody on Jacksonville's roster. I mean, Devon Hamilton's not that. Foley's not that guy. So Leonard Williams, absolutely, I'd be thrilled if they brought in Leonard Williams. I'd say poor man. Leonard Williams, he's a big ticket guy. He would be fantastic in Jacksonville. No harm for my diminishing Leonard Williams value, Jamal.
All right, one last guy I want to throw an honorable mention that was really close on my list. I just really think the Jaguars got to improve the trenches. L'Jarius Sneed. If he gets out of Kansas City, he'd be fantastic lockdown corner. You saw him in the Super Bowl. It's what he does. All of a sudden, his versatility on that back end improves a lot that the Jaguars can do, will want to do, especially in this man coverage system that Ryan Nielsen is going to want to run. L'Jarius Sneed would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember you even mentioning him during that Super Bowl time. He's going to make another team a happy team, and Jacksonville would be fantastic by him. He's another guy that probably priced himself out of Jacksonville this season.
The Jaguars are going to have to do a little work on their salary cap. Is it possible they could make a run at some of these guys? Maybe. It's probably not heavily realistic that they're going to go get that superstar free agent. A DJ Reader, I think, could be very realistic, especially because of the injury. Leonard Williams, maybe. If they really want to help Trevor, which I think is on everybody's mind, especially the guys in the building, T. Higgins, I think, is somewhat realistic. If somehow he hit the street, that they would try and find a way to make a play at that. So I don't want to say it's out of the woodwork or out of the realm of possibility. It's probably not the most realistic thing because there are more than a handful of needs. But it'll be interesting. I think we'll start to get an idea based on some of the salary cap moves. The biggest thing that would line them up to be able to make a play at a big guy, you got to get a deal done with Josh Allen.
Yeah.
That franchise tag is going to, I mean, it eats up so much of your salary cap. It prevents flexibility. That hurts. It's what hurt them last year with Evan Ingram. Because the franchise tag with him was like $17 million. Josh is like $20 million.
Yep.
So that's eaten up that much salary cap space on its own.
And there's no bend in that. So the issue when you say a big time long-term contract, when you're thinking, oh my God, $120 million contract for Josh, how's that helping the team? Well, there are things baked into these long-term deals where you got roster bonuses, workout bonuses, playing time bonuses, and stuff like that, where it can be structured, creatively. A franchise tag on Evan Ingram's situation, you're talking $17, $18 million. That's just a sitting there, a cinder block on your cap where you've got no leverage, no negotiation, no kind of ebb and flow where you are able to restructure any of that. That's just one solid cinder block on your cap right there, and it's hanging it down. So it really hamstrung Jacksonville last year. The same with Josh. I mean, you got until like July 15th to get that long-term deal done with him. So you would like to not have that franchise tag and that onerous $20 to $22 million black hole on the cap for that long of time, because it really prohibits what you can do in free agency. So
tough.
It's tough. Yeah. So you want to get that deal done. Yeah, it's more of a commitment long-term for Josh and stuff, but it hamstrings a franchise so much in not being able to come to that long-term deal. So that's why Trent Baalke and Doug Peterson and Tony Khan, Shad Khan, all those guys, the football guys, want to get that deal done because it frees you up in what you're able to do in the short term as well.
All right. So now we're going to the under-the-radar guys. So each of us have 2 of those. I told you we didn't overlap on the big-time free agents. We'll see if there's some overlap here. Okay, who's your first under-the-radar free agent that you think would make sense?
Okay, and I'm going to go with some help for Trevor in this situation. Okay. Andre James from Vegas, Lloyd Cushenberry. Those 2 guys are centers. Not necessarily the sexiest signing. Again, you mentioned you're not going to go out and run out with an Andre James jersey on your back. Comparable numbers to a Luke Fortner's last year: 3 penalties, 4 sacks given up. Lloyd Cushenberry, 5 penalties, 1 sack allowed last year. 5 penalties, 4 sacks allowed. Luke Fortner last year, but again, I think veteran guys who can come in, steady that behind Trevor and provide some stability to that offensive line. A little under the radar, and by saying that, you're not swinging for the fences, T. Higgins or blue chip kind of guy at the corner defensive line. So I'm going to go Andre James. He's my number 1 under the radar signing for Jacksonville.
Look, I like it. There's no question that the Jaguars have to get better on the offensive line. I think we keep going back to it. Trenches are a need. Andre James would be fantastic. Everybody saw Luke Fortner, and if you want to just see the reason why they need to upgrade the center position, go back and watch that last quarterback sneak against the Titans. And Luke Fortner is like 100 yards the other direction. Maybe not 100 yards. That's a little overblown. But he was on his back where he didn't belong as Trevor Lawrence is trying to jump over the play. And I know people have defended him like, well, Trevor didn't let the offensive line in on the play call. I don't care what run play it is. A center not supposed to be 5 yards in the backfield on his back.
No.
So I get it. Look, Andre James did a great job. I mean, the Raiders liked him. They felt comfortable enough with him. They moved on from Rodney Hudson for him. He's done a good job there. Physical. I think he graded out better as a run blocker than a pass blocker, which ain't nobody going to complain about. Cushenberry, also very good there in Denver. I'm not going to argue with either one of those. I'm on board.
I think they are upgrades from a Luke Fortner, even though 100%. They were comparable stats. They're veterans. I think they provide some stability in a sense like you brought Brandon Sheriff in for that stability. These guys are not in the same breath as a top-tier Brandon Sheriff when he's healthy. But again, it provides stability. They're veteran guys, and I do think that provides stability at a position on the line where probably the weakest link in terms of the center right guard or left guard situation.
Probably. It's definitely the weakest link.
And it's something that provides. I mean, Trevor was sacked 35 times, career high, sacked more times last year in his 3rd season than he was as a rookie under Urban Meyer. So that tells you how they have to get better, protect their investment, and I think Trevor's growth continues with better stability in that offensive line. I think Andre James provides that.
Hey, look, you're going to hurt a lot of people's feelings with this one. Because, look, Jackson Powers Johnson, I mean, he is like a Jaguars mini rock star, and I mean, we're not even close to the draft. I mean, so there are going to be a lot of broken hearts if the Jaguars don't draft Jackson Powers Johnson from Oregon. So we'll see what happens, but if they sign somebody, I think that's the better way to go. Rather than going with a rookie again, you go with a veteran guy, and that gives you that reassurance that you're not going to miss. You know what you're going to get in a James. You know what you're going to get in a Cushenberry. There's somebody else on a free agent, but he has an injury coming out of Miami.
I would love Robert Hunt too, but he's not necessarily.
Hey, he'd be a big swing. He's going to get some money.
He's going to be the big one, so he would be in my first cut. But yeah, Robert Hunt or an Andre James kind of guy in free agency would be fantastic.
All right, so you went with Andre James. Yep. I'm going to go with a wide receiver, also help for Trevor, just maybe in a different way. So the guy that I'm going to go with, I don't know if you're going to like this one.
Okay, so give me a hint.
All right, he's a wide receiver. He went to Ohio State. He has had some injury issues, and he uses Twitter a whole lot.
Ted Ginn. Kidding.
Michael Thomas.
Michael Thomas, okay.
Michael Thomas. So,
Saint.
Yeah. So, look, he's had some injury issues. There's no way around that. But when he's healthy, he has been a very good receiver. I think we're past the prime Michael Thomas days. Those are gone.
Right.
The can't guard Mike days are probably behind him. But he is still a serviceable receiver. This past season, he played the majority of the games. He had somewhere around 500 yards for the Saints.
Okay.
He is still a very good receiver. And if you're going to go the cost-effective route, he is a guy who can start solving some of those receiver issues that the Jaguars have. Sure-handed, can do some things. He's not a number one guy anymore, and the Jaguars wouldn't be bringing him here in this situation to be a number one guy. He would be, I mean, almost akin to when they brought in Zay Jones. Look, you're getting a guy who understands. He's sure-handed. When he's healthy, he's solid out on the field. He's had some issues along the way. I mean, he talks a lot on Twitter, you know, which can always be fun. You don't know if you want that in your locker room or not. I don't know. But he's been a leader in his career, and when he's healthy, and if you can get him back to healthy Michael Thomas, I think you can get something good for him. Pro Football Focus also threw out their list of possible cuts. We talked about in the podcast a few weeks back as Zay Jones being one of those possible salary cap casualties. So if the Jaguars did move on from Zay, you got Calvin, that's a free agent. You got Christian Kirk. Michael Thomas probably isn't going to command a top dollar contract, but he's a swing that if you get him on the cheap, maybe a 1 or 2 kind of year prove it deal, and it works, then it worked.
Definitely.
So Michael Thomas is my under the radar free agent number 1.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. So we had a conversation a couple weeks ago where Jamal threw out veteran kind of guy. You don't as much tread on the tire. Talked about Jeff Okudah, rehabbing kind of from an injury or draft status that hadn't been fulfilled. Talk about CJ, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. This got me thinking about who could fit into that secondary mold.
Okay.
A la Jeff Okudah, CJ Gardner-Johnson. And he's not necessarily the under radar. I mean, he's more like your guy, Michael Thomas, where it's the name recognition is there, but his best year is probably behind him. But he's still got some tread on the tires. Stephon Gilmore.
I love it.
So that fits in the mold of a guy who can come in. Again, his best years are behind him.
Sure.
But a guy who can come in, I mean, defensive player of the year kind of guy, can come in and coach those young guys, coach a young Tyson, coach a potential number 1 draft pick in that situation where, again, the Cowboys probably not going to bring him back. He's got some tread on the tires still. He's still serviceable, a couple interceptions last year. And I like a guy, and he'd probably qualify more as a big-ticket item, but Derrick Henry, a guy who's coming back. You don't have a fullback on Jacksonville. Derrick's another guy who's got some tread left on the tires, but his best years are behind him. I think he could come in and be that guy who can get you a yard and a half in a situation where Travis Etienne couldn't get it last year. But I think a Derrick Henry on a prove-it deal. I think a Stephon Gilmore on a 1-year prove-it deal could come in there and be that stabilizing force in there. I look at it kind of like, and I brought this up on one of our last podcasts, where you bring in a guy like DJ Hayden, who came in and a higher draft pick, and his best years were obviously behind him, but can kind of come in there and play that that role. And I think with a younger Tyson, a draft pick, potentially a first-round draft pick, I like a guy like Stephon Gilmore. Move on to Darius Williams, which has been the talk, save you $10 million. A Stephon Gilmore on a 1-year prove-it kind of deal could come in there and, in a sense, be that stabilizing. And you mentioned the Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Jeff Okudah thing, and that kind of got me thinking after our last podcast.
I love the Stephon Gilmore move. I absolutely would love it. You want to find out in this next season what Tyson Campbell is. If you need to be throwing some money at it, put him in the room with a guy who has had the career that Tyson would love to have. Stephon Gilmore, he's a stopgap guy. He's only going to give you a couple of years left. At this point, he's probably a mercenary going from team to team. But let him be on your team. Is he the Stephon Gilmore of old? No, he's not that point in his career. But when he got challenged last year, I think it was A.J. Brown was talking a little trash to him. Stephon Gilmore woke up and gave him everything he could handle. So I love it. And he's a guy who has made his bread and butter playing man coverage.
Yeah, exactly.
So bring him in. He's going to be able to compete and give you something. And even if you draft a corner in the first round, is it bad to have Stephon Gilmore, Tyson Campbell, and this rookie corner all together hanging out?
At all. I love it. I love the potential of what Stephon brings to Tyson, who's still ascending in his career. I mean, going into a pivotal year 4, and then a potential rookie in the first or second round.
Yep.
And that's a great guy to learn from. Not a toxic guy. He's not a cancer in the locker room. He comes from pedigree. I mean, you're talking all pro. I mean, he would be a fantastic guy. And I think he, in the same vein as Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, he's a little bit better than Chauncey and could provide a little bit more, I think.
Yeah, he'll definitely give you a little bit more from the leadership standpoint. And you also mentioned Derrick Henry. Look, I am 100% on board with that. Sign him just so you don't have to play against him ever again. So if you've seen the highlights of Derrick Henry running through the Jaguars defense over the years, you should be just banging the table for them to sign this guy just so you never have to see another one.
Yeah, give Derrick 6-8 carries a game. I mean, he
probably wants more than that.
Yeah, of course, but he's still a guy at 31 who's still got some fuel in that tank, some tread on the tires, and I would love to see Derrick Henry in Jacksonville.
And you got to think bringing him home would be cool for him. I don't know if he's closed that door on his life or not, but you got to think that there's something there that would say, that would be a cool way to wrap up the career back in Jacksonville. All right, so your under the radar guy was Stephon Gilmore.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go, and you mentioned Derrick Henry, which is gonna kind of lead to my next guy because it's kind of same vein, different statures of their career. So AJ Dillon.
Oh man,
there you go. Okay, AJ Dillon. So from Green Bay, 247-pound running back. Hasn't had a ton of success in his career. Probably not going to cost a whole lot of money. But when the Jaguars have struggled time and time again in those short yardage situations, what better way to fix it than go get a 247-pound running back that specializes in getting you 1 yard? A.J. Dillon could be that guy. What do they call him? Quadzilla at one point? Yeah. Hey, look, bring that guy here on pennies on the dollar, and all of a sudden I feel like your short yardage situations are going to be solved.
What about Tank?
He's still on the roster.
What about Tank? You drafted Tank, and you figured that name would at least kind of benefit.
I'm a fan of Tank Bigsby. We'll see if year 2 is better for him than year 1. I don't think bringing in A.J. Dillon to me is akin to bringing in Dearness Johnson.
Yeah,
it's not prohibitive of Tank earning a spot, but if Tank doesn't wow you as that 1 yard, gotta have it moment kind of guy in training camp and early in the season, now you got a 247-pound backup plan.
Yeah, and look, I think the Tank hate was a little misguided from fans throughout it. He had a bad rookie year. No way to dice it. I mean, he had fumbled. He had balled off his hands that led to interception. He just did not have a good rookie year as a whole. But look at Jacksonville's offensive line. I mean, you're a rookie running behind a bad offensive line that Travis Etienne couldn't get a yard behind. I mean, Trevor was sacked 35 times behind. So I think Tank, with a little bit of the benefit of the doubt and what that offensive line did not provide last year, I think Tank will be better year 2.
All right, and I do have one honorable mention.
Okay.
Coming from Cleveland, he's a defensive lineman, Maurice Hurst. He's an interior pass rusher. He tends to grade out highly. The problem he's had is injury issues year after year at different stops. Probably not going to cost you a ton, but when he is healthy, he does give you some penetration, some pressure that interior pass rush the Jaguars have missed at times. So I think he would be worth. I think last year he had a pectoral injury. The year before that, I think it was a calf. So he's had injury issues. So he's a guy that you don't want to lean heavily on, but if you can get him to Jacksonville on a reasonable contract, he's going to pay dividends.
Yeah, and I have a couple honorable mentions too, and they kind of border between name guys who would fit our first mold and then the cuts of the second tier. Sheldon Rankins, former high draft pick. He was with the Texans, interior defensive line guy.
Now pause on that one for me. I actually want to stop you right there.
Okay.
All right. So I keep seeing people talk about Sheldon Rankins, and he's another one that I've seen catch fire. And I know he had a big season last year in Houston.
Yep.
But he's not. He puzzles me. Because he had a huge production last year with the Texans, and I get why people are saying he's got it. The numbers are there, and Sheldon's fine. I mean, he's a solid veteran. He's going to give you some run stopping.
Yeah, to me, he's like a DeJuan Smoot kind of guy where he's
not giving you as much pass rush as Smoot.
I don't know. He had 6 sacks last year.
Look at the rest of his career.
Correct, but he's got the caveat of being a former high draft pick.
Yes.
And that's when you take a little bit longer of a look at those guys. You're your first round guy.
And another guy, fantastically talented. He is a good run stopper. I mean, he has had fantastic. I mean, he's been in the league like 10 years, and he's had sack production in like 2 of them, like good sack production or even pressures in like 2 or 3 of them. Like, he's not a pass rushing guy. If you bring him in to be a run stopper, I'm on board. But I think the sack numbers last year in Houston were a little bit of fool's gold.
A little deceptive. Okay.
Yeah, I think those were a little deceptive.
Another guy, to me, a little younger than Sheldon, Javon Kinlaw. I like this guy coming into the draft. I liked him, and again, he's a guy that into that next chasm of his career, he's not going to be the 70 snap a game kind of guy. He's that rotational kind of piece, depth kind of piece. Again, he's a guy I liked coming out of the draft. The South Carolina, and I think he is another guy that could beef up that defensive line. Probably not a marquee type signing that's going to wow fans over, but he's a guy that could get in there and be a guy that you thought Foley Fatukasi was going to be.
So the Kinlaw one piques my interest. Let me tell you why. So you mentioned the high draft pick, maybe not lived up to the expectations kind of guy, and that's Javon Kinlaw. Athletic through the roof for a guy his size. The things he can do physically you'd almost think they're impossible. Consistency on the field has been lackluster. Production on the field has been lackluster. But he's also in San Francisco, where they have a fantastic defensive front. So there's 2 questions there. And nobody's going to know the answer until he moves on to his next spot, right? Is it because San Francisco's either system or there was too much talent that he couldn't really break through and get the learning reps and opportunities that he needed? Or is he just not ever going to get to where he could be,
absolutely.
where
Fair
you
question.
envision? So if you take the swing at Kinlaw to me, you're saying my coaching staff's going to get the most out of him. And there's going to be some D-line coach in the NFL that's going to say, I can get this guy to be a very good starter because of the things he can do physically. And he's an interesting one to me. On a non-big money contract, under the radar, couple of years kind of deal, I love it because if it works, all of a sudden you have a really good starter. Yeah. If it doesn't work, then, you're probably not out of pocket too much.
Yeah, you're talking like a 1 year, $3-4 million contract. I think I'd bite for that.
I'm on board with that because Kinlaw's interesting. He just hasn't had the production. Yep. But with guys like that, with that sort of draft grade, you tend to have to go back to some of the draft research on him. I do have one more for you. That I had made a long list before we decided to do this too. So I'll throw one for you since that's in that same vein. Because to Kinlaw, he stands out to me, and this is a guy I talked about last year. So going back to my evaluation from a year ago. Marcus Davenport. Former first-round pick. Yep. He has had some injury issues. Went to Minnesota last year on a 1-year prove-it deal. Had injury issues again. But he is a large body who can do things on the defensive line, can give you some edge depth if he can stay healthy. In the years where he stayed healthy, looked like they were starting to come together for him. I wouldn't sign him to be a starter, but you start talking about that third pass rusher. If you go from Josh, Trayvon to Marcus Davenport, I feel okay. Yeah. I actually feel pretty good in that situation. He's a guy who's had success. I think he's had 8 sacks in a season before in his career.
Is he, in your mind, an upgrade over, I know he's an upgrade over Caleb Wan, but is he an upgrade over DeJuan Smoot?
I think so.
In that situation?
I think so. The only thing that
peak DeJuan Smoot, not recovering from Achilles DeJuan Smoot. We're talking about peak DeJuan Smoot before the New York Jets game, 6th sack kind of year.
Before that, I would say I'd take Smoot. Okay. I'm just not sure where Smoot's going to be at physically right now. And Marcus Davenport, if he can stay healthy in a limited role, I think you can have something there that is a good rotational piece. He gives you something a little bit different. He's another big body, too. There's some guys out there under the radar that you can go and get that can provide some of that depth that all of a sudden you get some upgrades that you feel pretty good about.
Yeah. So that's I like where some of these diamonds in the rough or big ticket items, chances of our big ticket items coming to Jacksonville. What do you think, percentage wise?
I think there's a good chance. I'd say if on us hitting on one of the guys.
On one of the guys.
I'd give us like a 60% chance
of hitting on one of the blue chip guys.
Oh no, the blue chip guys. No, we're down to 30. I thought you meant one overall.
I'm thinking T. Higgins, Madubuike, those guys.
No chance. I think there's like 10
granular.
Yeah,
0.25%.
It's probably not going to happen. I just don't see them being big players. I remember a couple of years back, we were at the Players Championship, and the Jaguars were spending money left and right. Day one of free agency.
We're like, how do you pronounce Foyer?
Yeah, we're trying to figure all this stuff out in the media room at TPC Sawgrass. But I don't see that coming this year. I just don't.
No.
I think they're going to kind of let the market set itself. And I think as we look at those under the radar guys, your Chauncey Gardner-Johnsons that aren't going to go in the first wave. I think maybe a DJ Reader, I think, is realistic. Even a Derrick Henry, I don't think he's going to go quickly. So those kind of guys, I think, are 100% going to be in play as they start to make these decisions. So we'll see how it all comes together, how the pieces play out. All right, before we wrap this thing up, I'm going to throw one question at you. So the NFL franchise tag window officially open now. So the Jaguars can now slap Josh Allen with that franchise tag whenever they want. I don't anticipate this move coming quickly. My guess would be that it's going to come at some point toward the end of the window as they try and use this as leverage to get a deal done. So the question that I have, how much do you love Josh? Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you love Josh compared to, like, if he's going to get the same contract as a Danielle Hunter or somebody else, or if you, how much do you love Josh?
Send him a Valentine's Day card or shake his hand. Is that kind of what we're talking about?
That's kind of where we're at. Yeah.
Shake his hand. I'm not what Josh represents in Jacksonville, fantastic. I love what he brings. He's done it in 2 of his 5 years in the NFL. He's an ambassador for Jacksonville. He's what you want. You want to draft a guy, develop him, watch him thrive in the community, eventually succeed. Ultimately succeed here. He's a family guy. My question about just emptying the Brinks truck for Josh is, can he do it more than 1 year? He had a great rookie season. He's been invisible a couple years. He had injury issues. He broke out under his 5th-year option. He's fantastic. Am I married to the point of 5 years, $200 million, Josh Allen? Yep. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And from a business standpoint, I am lukewarm about such a long-term extension because he's only done it 1 of his 5 years in the league, and that's my concern. Everything else about Josh, the things on the outside, the family man, the how he talks to you in the locker room, what he's done. I mean, fantastic. No questions about that. He deserves every look of monetary things that he gets from that. But my concern, again, is he's not done it consistently enough. It's 1 of 5 years in the league that he's done it. He's young enough, yes. He's family guy, great for locker room, leader. But my question about that long-term deal that he's going to get, be it in Jacksonville or a number of other cities that would pay him, is the consistency. Can you do that year in and year out after you pay this guy record-setting number? I had questions about that.
Yeah, and I think those are valid questions. And with all that's kind of said, I think we're on the same page a little bit about where we're kind of at on Josh. But if they don't pay Josh, it's like burn the building down. What are you doing?
Yeah.
I think we're at that point.
Yeah, it's prototype. He's exactly what you want. You draft him, you develop him, you see him succeed, yes. You pay the guy. I mean, you do that. That's what you do. That's the mark of a great NFL team is drafting, developing, rewarding. And they did that with Devon Hamilton.
Right.
Josh is going to cost a lot more, and when you're investing that much big ticket item, I think you'd want to see some more production. But absolutely, Josh has done everything you need him to do other than do it consistently.
It's literally what they said they wanted to be. Trent Baalke, Doug Peterson have both said they want to be drafted and developed team. The only thing is they didn't draft Josh.
Yeah.
But he's developed. He's in the building. Now it's time to pay the piper, which is part of draft and develop. You draft, develop, and keep, not draft, develop, let leave. So he's a guy going into his peak, and they know the nature of the beast. If he walks, he's going to get paid huge money.
More than he's going to get paid in Jacksonville.
From somebody else.
Yep.
So they need to get a deal done. They need to get it done quickly. Scale of 1 to 10 as we wrap things up that you think they end up getting a deal done, or if the franchise tag gets hit on him.
I think they end up signing him. I think over time, I think the negotiations, I think free agency is going to go crazy. They're going to see how much edge rushers are getting paid, and they're going to say, hey, Josh has done, he's been an ambassador for the team, and I do think they probably do get something done by July 15th with him, just because, it helps the franchise more if he's able to sign a long-term deal. It refutes everything that you've said and alluded to if you don't sign Josh Allen, I mean, he could not have done anything more than do it a little bit more consistently.
Right.
So I do think, I mean, franchise tag makes sense because if I was Trent and Doug, I'd want to see that one more year out of him before paying him the bag.
Yeah.
But I think the salary cap situation they're in, what he's meant to the community, the team, I think by July 15th they'll have a deal done.
I'm on the other side. I think he's going to play on the franchise tag. I think they're going to tag him, say do it again. I don't think it's going to get done. We'll see what happens. Justin has a little bit more hope than me. Maybe I'm jaded in this situation.
Jamal was jaded last year. He didn't believe in Josh, and who did?
I did not. He did. He did. I thought Trayvon, and it wasn't that I didn't believe in him. I just thought Trayvon was going to take a nice jump. I guess maybe you could say that because I didn't think he was going to get the double digits. I thought Trayvon would, but Trayvon did get the double digits.
They both had great years.
So I was at least close. It was a lot closer in the end than I thought it was going to be at one point in the year. Let's just go ahead and say I had conceded loss, but Trayvon took care of me down the stretch.
Yeah.
So all right, that'll do it for this News4JAGs podcast. We still got plenty more off-season content coming your way, so make sure you're checking out. We'll have new episodes each week. You can subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Hey, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time.